Hey there everyone, this is CV Ripley, and today I'm going to be discussing the benefits to having large amounts of memory on an X470 or an X399 chipset, AMD chipset. These chipsets feature the new StoreMi technology, which allows you to have a RAM cache. And what the RAM cache is, it's a buffer between your memory and your hard drive. So everything that gets written to the super fast RAM cache, and in the background it writes that cache to the hard drive. Therefore, you feel the additional benefits to having faster RAM memory and having more memory. So in this first test, we are going to be simulating 10 gigabytes of data being written, which would will closer simulate copying or manipulating, say, video files, ISOs, or anything of that sort. So the first test is going to use a massive amount of RAM. This is going to be about half of my memory. Normally, if you have this type of memory, it would go to waste, but with this chipset, it does not go to waste. So it's not how much you have, it's how you use it, to say. So we started the RAM cache, and now we start the test. Also, since I am recording, it will skew the results slightly because, well, I have to be able to record, but it shouldn't make that much of a difference. Notice over here at the utilization is very low, and that's because we're using the buffer. And during our free time, it will write and process that 10 gigabytes to the disk, and it's when it's more convenient, and not to bog down or slow you down while you're reading or writing data. Now, these 4K files, as you see here, 4K files are the most difficult files for the drive to read or write to. And this test reads and writes, it's reading and writing 10 gigabytes of tiny 4 kilobyte files. So it's a massive amount of files being written at a time, or one at a time, at 100 megabytes per second, which is pretty good. Later, you will see what it's like to not have the cache, and I will make you suffer waiting through it, because I feel that if you do not experience the difference in the speed, then you will not understand the importance of having more RAM in your system. So imagine if you have a lot of little files, say ROMs, or even just installing Windows, how much of a benefit this is right now, because the normal 4K write speeds are very low. This is a little bit more than a minute to complete 10 gigabytes of 4K files. You'll see that in the next test, it's 4K files, it's the same test except we're doing it multi-threaded. So you'll have 64 threads writing 4 kilobyte files to the drive up to 10 gigabytes. And you'll see what the difference is with multi-threading. But that is dependent on the application reading and writing the files. So the more real life practical use would be the single threaded read-write speeds, which you are watching right now. And we see on the side here that it's starting to write some of that buffer to the disk now. Like I said, it does in its own free time, or when it is convenient for it, or when the buffer gets maxed out. And there we have it uh, with a 30 gigabyte RAM cache. So now we're going to go ahead and stop this. When I stop this, it is going to process all the changes and such. It's going to take a minute. Normally you would not be waiting here. You would just have it running in your background all the time, and you don't actually have to wait for this thing to process or anything. But it's what I'm trying to say is it's seamless. Okay, now let's say theoretically you have 16 gigabytes of RAM, and well, you want to have RAM cache, but you don't have a whole lot of memory to spare. So uh, let's put in a good 3 gigabytes. You could put say 5 gigabytes in there, but then you're using a third of your memory, and I just don't see why you would want to use limit yourself to having only 10 gigabytes of memory available. That just uh, doesn't seem practical. But okay, we have a 3 gigabyte RAM cache right now. We're going to repeat the same test, and I will try to explain what's going on while this is doing this. So we start off real fast, and then we see that it starts to taper off, and the reason for that is we've almost instantaneously maxed out the cache. So we're getting a little bit closer to what I would get if I didn't even have the RAM cache in the first place. So, and now we are seeing just how slow 4K files is going to be. I'm going to estimate probably 5 or 6 minutes to write and probably about 8 or 9 minutes to read. So this will be some of the dullest part of this video, but well, the whole video is probably going to be dull. But hey, it's educational, it's not entertainment. But yeah, there we go. And we see over here on this side, we have to write all this data to the disk now. So we are pretty much maxing out our data cables right now for how much we're transferring to the disk. There's no leeway anymore because we only have a 3 gigabyte buffer. Now, if we didn't have any buffer at all, it would actually be around 100% of the time. It would be maxing out to 100% all the time. You wouldn't see any of these little spikes right here. I would say that these write speeds are still pretty respectable. Uh, Okay, and if you're still awake, you'll see that performance has dropped significantly compared to having 30 gigabyte RAM cache versus a 3 gigabyte RAM cache. But I hear you saying right now, um, thinking is, hey, you got that 16 terabyte RAID 5 right there. Why don't we test that out? Sure, why not? I have not tested this before, so we'll try RAM cache with an external 16 terabyte RAID 5 array. 30 gigabyte. And that has started. And change it to this. And let's give it a go. The speeds appear to be what I normally would get if I did not have a RAM cache. That is interesting. I am not going to make you sit through the 4K speeds for this one because it'll probably be a half hour to an hour. But we'll see how the read and write speeds are for now. These are five 3 terabyte Western Digital. Oh wow. Okay. So the read speeds are improved by the RAM cache. Either that or it just finally decided to kick in. You know, I'm going to restart this test because I am curious now. Because I don't understand why the write speeds were not improved, but the read speeds were. Let's go ahead and terminate that. I may just pause the recording and reset for the RAID 5. Okay. Now, what is this thing doing here? Okay. Are we just deleting the files? I don't know. Okay. Oh, never mind. I guess I'll just continue from here. We'll pick this as the master drive. Okay. And we will restart this test. Some interesting facts about this RAID array is I purchased these Western Digital Enterprise or yellow drives from Newegg, and when I got them, they were not in any type of a box. They were inside of a they were inside of some foam packing, and which didn't bother me, but after a few weeks, one of the drives died. So and Newegg is an authorized reseller of these drives. So I contacted Western Digital, and they would not replace the drive to me. And I asked them why, and they said, "Well, these drives are what they considered gray market drives. They were actually pirated." Um, and they were able to trace the serial numbers to, well, stolen merchandise. So I thought that was pretty crazy, but then I was starting to get upset because, well, if Newegg uh, was a authorized realtor of reseller of these drives, then uh, and Western Digital authorized them to sell drives, then there should be some kind of uh, some type of control over whether or not they can sell gray market drives or not, or what. And if they were stolen, well, why don't they return the drives to Western Digital? And it drew out for a couple of weeks, and then Western Digital had uh, one of their higher up supervisors contact me, and they asked me everything about the drives, where I got them, etc. And because I cooperated with whatever investigation that they had going on, they offered to replace the drive and to give me the warranty on all the other drives that I purchased. So that was nice of them. I I could have gotten uh, really screwed over by Newegg there, but it all it all turned out pretty good. Yeah. Okay. So now we're seeing. Well, oh my God, 2 hours. Uh, yeah, I'm not gonna make you guys sit for 2 hours, but yeah. Okay, we're gonna no, no, we're not doing that. Uh, let's pick the master drive as D again. I seem to have better progress with picking the D drive the last time, so let's start this all over again. So, alright, 200 megabytes a second, that's decent. I eventually want to change these out and use a backplane, because I do have an enterprise grade RAID card, an LSI card. Uh, uh, that supports 8 drives, and I will. The problem with this enclosure is it uses a port. It splits the ports, because otherwise there would only be, I believe, 4 ports. So one of them has to be split in order to make it 5 ports. Oh my God, I wish I could skip this to see what the read speeds would be. What I'll probably do is just abort this test, because nobody's waiting 2 hours to see what the results would be. But based on what the read speed is, I would estimate that the read speeds would be similar to what I had for my first test on this RAID 5 array. But we'll just see if there's any change in within the first. Yeah, no, not really. So it's still 2 hours to write 10 gigabytes of 4 kilobyte files to the drive. So abort that, and we'll go ahead and stop this. And the last final test would be how is my speed on my SSD array with just without any caching at all. So we can just cut out the caching and see if it makes any difference. In fact, I'm not even going to use the 10 gigabyte file here. I'm just going to do 1 gigabyte because the speeds will be about the same. You can do the math. You see the megabytes per second here. Just calculate it out and you'll see. So 2 gigabytes per second writing, 2 gigabytes reading. So that would take 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 5 seconds to write a 10 gigabyte file. Whereas before it was 1.5 seconds. So as you can see here, there's almost no difference as if you had a 3 gigabyte cache or if you had no cache. It's when you use a lot of memory is when you see the difference. And that's kind of a bit of a shame because like me, I bought 3 RAM kits for this computer. The first one was a 16 gigabyte RAM kit. Before I realized how good the StoreMi technology was. So then I decided to go get a 32 gigabyte kit, and I noticed an improvement. Well, I wanted to push it a little bit farther, so I ended up maxing out the memory. And the memory in this system is the maximum speed for this processor. It's a 2700X. Which the maximum RAM speed for it is 2933 megahertz, I believe. Yeah, as you can see, almost no improvement with between having a 3 gigabyte cache versus no cache. You might as well not even bother turning it on. But this is the reason why I believe if you're gonna go this route, just get a bunch of RAM, put it in there, and make sure you use the memory. A lot of people get the memory and then they don't know how to use it. So this is a viable way to use your memory. Another thing you can do with the memory would be to use a Ramdisk. Yep. And with this application, you can make a little drive, and it'll actually be faster than this caching that we have going on here. So we could make like a 8 gigabyte cache. It'll dynamically add or subtract to the drive as the demands of the system are increased. But you can put your temporary files on here, and that will make speeding up. Yeah, as you can see, this is a 8 gigabyte drive, and over here I'm not even using 8 gigabytes, so it's going to dynamically allocate this memory. You can also make it so it saves it to disk when you shut down the computer. Uh, but if you're to put your temporary files on here, it will speed up things such as your rendering or your recording, things of that nature, and such and so on. So I guess that's all for this video. I know it's pretty droning and pretty dry education here, but yeah, but this is what you can expect out of having more RAM or maxing out your RAM on your X470 or X399 chipset. So thank you and have a good day.